Toronto last year saw a 90% increase in a single year of e-bike fires happening. And we're told by the fire departments around 1 every 3 days. Anyone here that might own a building or manage a building can tell you they're nervous about this.
We have a real problem. We haven't accommodated how we're going to manage the charging end of it. We need to offer an actual solution. We just don't have a solution.
One of the goals that's really big within Amsterdam and should be the goal in Toronto and North America as well is to get charging out of the building. We want to get it outside of the building into these parking garages, at transit hubs, or safely on the street. Our suite of lockers can be applied for any application, apartments, social housing, bike libraries, swapping, residential units, student housing, all of this. And we believe that it's the solution that enables more biking and lets everybody win. Hi guys, thanks for showing up. My name is Brett. I'm the CEO and co-founder of PowerShelter. And yeah, together with Signature, we're going to talk today a little bit about e-bike infrastructure and stuff that's kind of happening in the Toronto area. So I want to start by a question to my audience here. How many of you guys came by bike today to the conference? One.
Oh, yeah, Emily.
That's kind of what I figured. So if I were to ask that question, let's say 10 years ago at this conference, and it said, how many of you guys came by EV to the conference? I think we'd probably have around the same response rate, right? So the market was still in infancy in terms of e-biking and cycling, but it's growing. So we have 1 million plus e-bikes sold in the US and Canada alone a year. And already in North America and Europe, we have 15 million people that are currently using e-bikes daily for commuting. And it's a huge growing number. And similar to when we started out on the EV journey, and I myself was a part of that, I worked for Tesla very early on, the charging infrastructure is lacking for widespread adoption. So there's 40 million e-bikes on North American and European roads, and every single one needs to charge tonight. Where does that happen? Right now, they're charging in these kind of places. So you guys have probably seen this. Your coworkers or yourselves who have e-bike, they're charging under desks at the offices, in apartment hallways, in student dorms, on balconies. Sometimes they're in bike rooms and just with a single wall outlet. And so we didn't solve EV charging with an extension cord. So why should we do the same for e-bikes? And one thing I always like to say is a plug on the wall isn't infrastructure, right? Chargers get stolen, batteries get stolen. An outlet could be charging dozens of bikes like you see here in the photo below. There's no monitoring, no management, and no safety. And this is a huge problem that's plaguing property managers, developers, apartment owners, office space managers, everything, those kind of people. And it really does matter because, as many of you have probably seen in the news, fires are happening. So just last year, there was 268 e-bike battery fires in New York alone. It's almost, one every day and a half. It's crazy. 18 deaths and 150 injuries. Toronto last year saw a 90% increase in a single year of e-bike fires happening. And we're told by the fire departments around 1 every 3 days happening in the greater Toronto area. Where I'm from in Edmonton, a couple months ago in January, there was an e-bike fire. It caused $500,000 in damages and 80 people had to leave the apartment for a few days, which is that top image there. And only a couple weeks ago in Amsterdam, where I live now, there was a huge e-scooter fire. Everyone had to close their doors and windows in the city. It was massive, millions of dollars of damages. And this is stuff that's happening everywhere. You can just Google e-bike fire and you'll see that it's happening. And so lithium fires can't be extinguished with conventional methods. And so the goal isn't to scare people right now to say we don't want you e-biking, because we do. It's to move charging out of the offices, out of bedrooms, out of buildings, and into somewhere that's built for it. So here's some of the things that happen in the news quite a bit. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see that just a simple Google search will show you all of these. One of the things to note is the Toronto fire chief saying it's the largest growing fire safety risk in the city. And so why is this important, right? There's really cool statistics that show people don't actually care how they get from A to B. They really don't. So they value their time first, their cost second, and their convenience third. And so e-biking has really replaced cars in a lot in the last 5 years because of the cost has come down. And we're starting to see a lot of people choose e-biking. It's not only cheaper, but very oftentimes it's faster. Anyone who's sat in Toronto traffic can tell you that you can walk faster than traffic sometimes here. And so as cost of living increases and as we start to continue to build biking infrastructure, we can see people move to e-bikes. Another application is the elderly baby boomer generation that's continuing to grow that may not feel comfortable driving anymore or may not have their licenses anymore and are finding that e-bikes are a way for them to get around and stay a part of the community. And so, yeah, another really good thing that Toronto has been doing is implementing the bike share scheme, which is really getting people into biking. But as people start to get used to that infrastructure and used to get to biking, they might move over to personal e-bikes. And then we're still at that same problem where do we charge these? If I go to the office, am I charging it on my desk? Do I leave it downstairs? Do I not charge at all? An interesting thing that's happened in Toronto recently was the GO train and TTC, they banned bringing the e-bike batteries on the train. And so right after COVID, a lot of people bought bikes and were biking to the train station and then bringing their bike on the train station and going into the city. Now that they can't do that anymore, a lot of people have reverted back to driving and the lots have started filling up and not having enough parking space anymore. So we've essentially taken those people out of the system for biking it. And so we at PowerShelter and one of the goals that's really big within Amsterdam and should be the goal in Toronto and North America as well is to get charging out of the building. So we want to get people charging in bike rooms if the buildings have it. We want to get it outside of the building into these parking garages, at transit hubs, or safely on the street. And so the same evolution that EV charging made from charging in a garage outlet to actually networked infrastructure. So Mark has been here before and I'll pass it over to him.
So, and we had a bit of a discussion and said, okay, talk about these viewpoints. The idea of too early. But when I used to, I listen to CBC radio, I wake up to Metro Mornings. I for a very long time, every morning it seemed that there was another story about electric vehicles. Maybe I was attuned to it, but it seemed to be all the time, always hearing about electric vehicles. There was something happening in the news. A lot of that has disappeared, and it seems to be now e-bikes seem to be what I hear in the morning. So I feel like all this time has passed, and we're in the same exact space that we started in when I started in charging maybe 10 years ago. So that part's happening. The other thing is, you talk about, we have enough cars or do we need chargers? These two things, in terms of the vehicles, have sort of followed together. It didn't end up being a zillion chargers and that people bought cars. Everything kind of grew together. And I think we're at the same place now. We've actually have the bikes on the road, but we have a real problem. We haven't accommodated how we're going to manage the charging end of it. Yes, we can plug it in, but we do. This is it. And the fires are a true problem. I don't think they're really at this point much of a problem with the cars, but they are a true problem with the e-bikes. When I look at an e-bike, I see the exact amount of battery and steel that it takes to move one person. This morning I drove here in my Model S. I don't know how many thousand pounds that was.
I came by e-bike.
Yes, I was a little further away, but that's right. The idea of a battery, the scooters and things of that nature, it's working well. It's working well for delivery people. So it's a right fit. We have to just help to figure out the other piece, right? Of why we're uniquely positioned. This is an EV and charging expo. So over all these years, this is it's the fourth year in the conference and the fourth year I'd be coming here, and I've never seen an e-bike or a scooter here. But that's a means of transportation. It's an electrified means of transportation. This sign that you see here, I stopped. This was at the top of my street on the end of a bus shelter. And I'm not one to usually stop my car and go out and take a picture that I thought, well, something's going on here. I've never, where did this sign come from? And then, so I thought, okay, this should be there's a whole series of these signs, it turns out, when I looked into it. And I actually, if you click on this QR code and you go to the next slide for me. That QR code takes you to information. Part of the information is fire safety from the City of Toronto. This is an excerpt. It's actually quite long. But so think about this for a minute. We do an enormous amount of work in condominiums that just happen to be a customer of ours in general. And so there's bikes. Just like there's cars, there's bikes in condos. So here's the instruction. Never charge the e-bike in a hallway, stairway, or a shared area. Okay, well, that takes care of those areas. Where am I going to go? Don't charge it near the unit's entrance. So I don't know if any of you have been in a 600 square foot condo. There's not a lot of like big open spaces waiting for something to happen. Use approved batteries. I don't even know if some people would know what an approved battery is. A lot of times people are buying these because they're wanting the cost to be low. It's very hard to understand whether it's approved or not. And even if it was approved, who's checking in the condo? There's nobody at the front security checking to see if this is approved so it can go up and it can't go up. Frankly speaking, a lot of times the bikes are never making it past the front door. There's another storage area for them. So it's not even an option, but I can take my battery out if I want. So check with the building management to find out what the charging policy are about the e-bikes. Well, we have this conversation every day. They don't know what to put in their policy. They've been asking, because one thing leads to another. They want to talk about the fires in the cars. They want to talk to me about the e-bikes as well. What can we put in our policy? Well, what actually is going to be the plan? I don't really think you can try to ban something if you want, but I don't think it's possible because I don't think you can actually manage it. And in the end, if you banned it, how will you manage if I put it in my battery in my backpack and take it upstairs? Who's possibly watching? And ultimately, when this happens in a suite, it's a disaster. The suite is just consumed. So if the battery catches fire, and it happens very quickly, the battery catching fire, you'll have a bit of an off gas or what have you, and it's quite volatile. You don't actually probably once it looks like something's wrong with battery, you probably don't want to put it in your hands. It's like a bomb. So evacuate, close the doors, pull the fire alarm. We need to come up with better. Of course, if there's a fire in my suite, this is what I'm going to do. We need to offer an actual solution. We just don't have a solution. And that's what got me excited about this whole idea, because we don't normally do this type of thing, is that this sounded like a solution to a problem that I was hearing, not something we made up. You take it from me, right? Tell us a little more. You told us about the problem. Let's talk about the solution a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think everybody wins when we move charging outside and when we provide proper infrastructure for charging. So I want to take a step back and say there are so many people that rely on e-biking now to commute to work. You know, a lot of low-income people are some of the highest purchasers of e-bikes because it allows them to get from A to B fast at a cheaper cost. And if we completely ban, like Mark said, from buildings and say, no, you can't, people aren't just going to pick up and say, okay, I'm going to buy a car now, right? We're just preventing the inevitable, or people are going to continue to use their way of transport that they're getting to work from. And so when we move charging outside and when we enable people to e-bike safely, we get a lot of benefits from that. So buildings are a huge one where we can reduce the liability. We can have compliance. I mean, anyone here that might own a building or manage a building can tell you they're nervous about this. And they shouldn't need to be. Employees. There's a statistic out from the Transport of London that shows that employees that bike to work and even e-bike to work have 4.5 fewer sick days per year. That's crazy amount of time that employees are working better. So employers benefit from this as well. Cities is a no-brainer where we're having fewer fires, and everyone of part of a city, when we enable cycling, benefits from these, right? The more people, for every one person you get onto a bike, it takes one person out of a car very often. And so people who are driving cars, a lot of people here, as we saw by the show of hands, actually benefit from this as well. Riders are a huge one as well. So we provide riders with a safe and reliable charging without the fear, without having to worry about their charger being stolen, their battery being stolen, or their bike being stolen. Because bikes are 80% less likely to be stolen if the battery is going to remove. So if I remove my battery, lock up my bike, what am I doing with my battery? There's not really been a solution to this right now. And lastly, fleet operators. So we, as a company also, our lockers work for swapping and battery charging for riders. There's a huge amount of workers right now that are delivering food, delivering, whatever in the city, and they're riding these e-bikes. And what's actually happening is they'll get together in a group of 10 to 20 of them, and they'll rent a really cheap apartment and use that as a charging hub or a station for themselves. So you'll have 20 batteries charging inside of a home. Imagine you live above that home. You live beside it. People don't know this is happening, and these are catching fire. This is happening all over Europe, all over New York, all over Toronto, and it's not really been addressed with. So, yeah, the kind of thing that we want to say is we want people cycling. Everybody wins when we're cycling, but we also need to mitigate the risk that comes with that. And so, yeah, that's kind of the solution. So I was previously working for Tesla for 7 years in this space, and we were all given e-bikes to get to work. And one day they said, you cannot charge on your desk anymore. And there was hundreds of us trying to figure out, okay, well, what are we going to do? And I said, there's got to be a solution, and there wasn't. And that's when I kind of said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the risk. This is the one risk I do in my life, and start something to address this problem because I'm an avid cyclist. And we came up with the Smart Shelter, which if you guys are interested, you can come see over there at the Signature Electric booth. We actually have it here. And so, yeah, our suite of lockers can be applied for any application, apartments, social housing, bike libraries, swapping, residential units, student housing, all of this. And we believe that it's the solution that enables more biking and lets everybody win.
Scalable, right?
And very scalable, yes.